Hello and welcome. Are you ready to become a great supervisor? The kind of supervisor everyone on the team really looks up to? Well, if you work in a hotel and you want to be a fantastic leader, you're in the right place. We are going to walk through all the important steps to help your team succeed.
All right, so here's our plan for this explainer. First, we'll talk about welcoming new people to the team. Then we'll get into how you check on their work. How are they doing? After that, a really big one. When should you teach and when should you correct someone? We'll also cover what happens when rules are broken, and we'll finish up with something that is, believe me, the most important rule for any supervisor.
Okay, let's jump right in. Welcoming a new employee. You know that saying, you never get a second chance to make a first impression? Well, it is so true here. A really good welcome on that first day can make all the difference and helps the new person feel like they're part of the team right away. So this whole process, it actually has a name. We call it onboarding, or you might hear it called induction. And really the main goal is just to make the new employee feel comfortable and welcome. It's all about showing them how things work, from the hotel's rules to what they'll be doing day to day.
Okay, so how do you do this well? Here are 4 key steps. Step 1, welcome. Introduce the new person to everybody on the team. Step 2 is the tour. Show them around, not just the front where the guests are, but the back of house too. Step 3 is all about SOPs. That's standard operating procedures. Think of it like the rule book for their job. And finally, step 4, the buddy system. Pair them up with someone who's been there for a while and can help them out.
All right, so your new employee is starting to get comfortable. Now what? Well, your job as a supervisor changes a bit. Now it's about checking in to see how they're doing. And that brings us to our next topic, checking their performance and using something we call KPIs. This kind of check-in usually happens in a special meeting called a performance appraisal. Now, don't think of this as a scary test. It's really just a private talk to see how things are going. It's a great time to talk about what's working well and also what could be even better.
But you might be wondering, how do you know if someone is doing a good job? How do you measure it? Well, that's where KPIs come into play. KPI stands for Key Performance Indicators. They're just the specific rules or goals we use to measure how good the work is. It makes things really clear for everyone.
Let me give you a couple of examples so this makes more sense. For housekeeping, a KPI might be clean 15 rooms during your shift. See? Simple. For the front desk, maybe it's check a guest in less than 3 minutes. These are really clear goals.
Now, when you have that meeting, it's super important to talk about 2 things. You talk about their strengths, what they do really, really well, and you also talk about opportunities. The areas where they can get even better. It keeps the conversation positive and helpful. Okay, this next part is a really big one for any supervisor. Sooner or later, there's going to be a problem. And when that happens, you have a choice to make. Do you teach them or do you have to correct them? It's the difference between coaching and discipline. So let's think about this. What should a supervisor do when there is a problem? Let's look at 2 different situations because your action will be different depending on why the problem happened. This table makes it super clear. You use coaching when an employee is new or just doesn't know how to do something. It's about skill. But you use discipline when an employee breaks a rule they already know, like showing up late. That's about behavior. So imagine you say something like, "Hey, let me show you a faster way to fold the napkins." See? That's coaching. You're teaching. You're helping them learn and get better at the job. But what if you have to say, "This is your second time arriving late. We need to follow the rules." That's different, right? That's discipline. You're correcting their behavior because a rule was broken. Okay, so let's say you do have to use discipline. When rules are broken, it's so important to have a fair process. This isn't about getting angry or punishing someone. It's about being consistent and clear. This process is called progressive discipline. It has 4 main steps. First, you give a verbal warning, just a private talk. If the problem continues, step 2 is a written warning that goes in their file. Step 3 could be a suspension where they can't work for a few days. And the very last step, only if nothing else works, is termination. The idea is to give them a chance to improve.
So we've talked about a lot of things, right? But there's one rule that is the most important of all. For everything we've discussed, you have to remember this one thing. Always write it down. I want you to remember this saying, if it is not written, it didn't happen. Seriously, this is the golden rule. You have to keep good records of everything. It's so, so important.
So what kind of things should you be writing down? Well, you should write down when training is finished, Definitely write down any disciplinary problems. And hey, don't forget to write down the good stuff too.
When someone on your team does great work, write that down. It's super important.
To help you out, here are a few key words that are really useful to know. Like the probation period. That's just the first 3 months of a new job. Or punctuality, which simply means being on time. These words will help you sound like a pro.
So there you have it. You now know the steps to being a great supervisor. You have the map. So, what's the very first thing you're going to do to become an amazing leader for your team?